Chapin. I joined YouTube almost 2 years ago, hard to believe. And before that, I was at Bell Media. Actually, Darcy and I know one another from our time there. And when I was there, I managed our digital news properties. For the first 4 years, I had CTV News, BNN Bloomberg, CP24. I had editorial as well as the product and the business and the development and all of that. And then over time, I moved over to take on CTV as well, at which point I handed over my editorial responsibilities and then continued on to also manage TSN and Crave. So really run the whole gamut. But truthfully, news is really my favorite. I went to journalism school, really, really love it. And when I joined YouTube, I was just to focus on news. I now also have TV and film and sports. So my job is really to help everybody figure out what to do on YouTube, depending on your goals. And, that can be making money, acquiring new audience. But that's really my job, is to help you figure out a YouTube strategy. And so basically what I do is I work with all of the big media organizations, all of the major newspapers. And so what I'm going to share with you today is training tailored specifically to the news community. Because YouTube has become a very important source of news. And actually at YouTube, we've leaned in to that responsibility. We actually have a whole group we call the responsibility group. And our belief is, our philosophy is, the more we can raise up authoritative voices in the news space, the better off the platform and the audience will be. So I'm just really thrilled to be here to share with you guys today. And listen, as we go through this, feel free to raise your hand, ask a question in the chat. Colleen's going to help me keep track of what folks are asking. And if you didn't catch it earlier, this is going to be recorded and will be shared out later. And I will also be sharing the deck. Okay, everybody? So I'm just going to get started. Okay. So optimizing the news experience on YouTube. So we're going to start by talking about putting together your content strategy. Really, how do you think about posting content, what content, when, how often, etc. And so there's really, as we talk through this, 3 goals that we're going to focus on. These are usually the goals of organizations. One, of course, is to build and then sustain a subscriber base. Incredibly important as you're looking for new audiences, and particularly young folks. So how do you grow your audience? 2, how do you actually reach them in different places? So there are a number of different ways people may find your content on YouTube. Often, to be honest, it's rarely on your channel page. They usually find you in other ways. So we'll talk about how to optimize for that. And then we'll also talk about how to engage your community. One of the unique value props of YouTube, we've got a few, but one of them is that actually, if you choose to, you can establish a dialogue with your audience. You can accept and respond to comments. You can enable live chat. There's a tab for you to post to your community, ask them questions, promote upcoming investigative series, for example. So that is really one of our, as a video platform, one of our unique value props. So let's talk about one of the central sort of foundational strategies that we share with news teams, and I'm going to walk you through it here. I think one of the biggest challenges, especially for teams that aren't resourced with a ton of folks, and you need to be really efficient, you really have to think about how are you able to program your channel over a period of time. And that might be 6 months to a year. I often say to channels that are really just spinning up, or organizations who are just thinking of getting started, the question you have to ask yourself is, how would you program the channel over 6 months to a year? And that could be, you post once a week, fine. Once a month, fine. The important thing is to be consistent. Consistency is very important on the platform. And so there's 3 different kinds of content that we think about as you look at this programming strategy. So really, that red line there, that's what we call your hub content. For you, what does that look like? Is it daily news coverage? Are you doing investigations? What is it that your news organization is focused on? And so it's the content that you steadily, consistently publish to the platform. Then we look at those spikes in blue. And those are really what we call the hero content. But essentially, whenever there's a big news story, perhaps it's a tent pole, perhaps it's a breaking news issue, depending, of course, on whether or not your newsroom is a breaking newsroom. But you will have those moments through 6 months or a year when obviously news spikes. So how do you cover that? And we think maybe that might be once a quarter, not even. It really depends, obviously, on the news cycle. So you've got your regular coverage, then you've got these spikes, and then also to fill in the gaps, per se, we have your help content. And really, that's a lot of explainer, more evergreen content, not quite as timely, maybe, that you can actually create in advance, schedule that publishing, maybe because it's not as timely, in order to create that consistent programming strategy. And again, it could be one explainer a quarter, it could be, one every 6 months, as long as it's consistent. Okay. So many different formats on YouTube. So on top of being able to connect directly with your audience and build community, there's so many different ways to tell a story. We support short form, long form, middle of the road, and these are just some examples of the formats you might consider posting on YouTube. So we have tons of live streaming. We have podcasting. YouTube is actually now the second biggest podcasting platform after Spotify. We're going to be doing some research here in Canada to validate that it's true here. Those are US numbers. I always hate citing US numbers, but in any case, know that podcasting is really big on YouTube. So if that's a format that you're leaning into, definitely consider publishing to YouTube. And then there's all sorts of other formats, analysis pieces, interviews, roundups. You'll see some examples of those throughout the deck. Maybe there's a way for you to do collaboration, perhaps with a YouTuber or some other journalist or some other channel. And then the documentary, sort of more long form documentary. I will tell you that investigative long form does incredibly well on the platform. Obviously, it's very expensive to produce, but it really, really does incredibly well. So we just went through attracting those subscribers. We talked about the hub content that you're publishing on a regular basis. And these are just some examples of how you might want to structure the content. I would imagine you guys are thinking about all of these things for your own properties anyway, but just mentioning them here. And the way to look at, obviously, building and sustaining subscribers is your subscriber number. I should mention, we're going to touch a little bit on it. YouTube analytics is incredibly robust. You can be overwhelmed by it often. And so we're going to do our best in this to suggest the key metrics that you should keep your eye on as you're growing your audience and your channel. So obviously for subscribers you've added over a period of time, you're able to see that. You're able to see net new subscribers. You're able to compare how many subscribers you add in one period versus another. You want to look at your watch time, which tells you, and that's the hours people watch. Is that going up or down? That can be a signal of whether or not the content is resonating. And then you want to look at how many subscribers did you add per 1,000 non-subscriber views. And there's a way to do that. And maybe if we have some time at the end here, I can show you in YouTube analytics. But we really think that's the best way to keep an eye on that subscriber number. Now, I will say there was a time when subscribers were what everybody wanted. Everybody was solely focused on subscribers. It's not entirely like that anymore, because a lot of your content is going to be viewed. In fact, the majority of it is probably going to be viewed by non-subscribers, and that's okay. You still make money with those people. They just might be as loyal an audience as your subscribers. So let's continue. And so as you look at reaching new audiences, we're going to touch on it a little bit later. Shorts has become a very important acquisitions tool on YouTube. That's our vertical video product that's under 60 seconds or under. So reaching new audiences, live coverage of events, breaking news, explainers, etc. I found that when I was at CTV News, every time there was a big event, sometimes unplanned, sometimes planned, we always use that as an opportunity to acquire new people who maybe aren't normally interested in the news. And truthfully, every time we had one of those spikes, what we'd look to see is that our numbers hit a new plateau. So they were here, spike, and then our new plateau is up here. And that's really what I think makes sense for you guys to focus on as well. And when you look at whether or not you're reaching new audiences, impressions are a very important metric. And when we say impressions on YouTube, we don't mean ad impressions. We mean, we actually mean how many eyeballs literally saw your thumbnail and title. It tells us whether or not your content is being recommended or suggested to more and more people. If it is, that's great. It means that you're reaching an audience, they're engaged, and it's a snowball. If you have video that performs really well, it'll be recommended to just a few more people. And if it does well with those people, then it'll be recommended more and more, and so on and so forth. So that's why we want to look at impressions. Also, I want to note that everybody's YouTube experience is different. So when I open my home screen, it looks entirely different than yours based on what we've watched. And so what's suggested to me, recommended to me will be totally different. And so when we look at increased impressions, we know that more and more people are seeing your video surface based on what they've already watched and based on how you've been able to add the correct metadata, the right descriptions. Those are incredibly important. Also, when it comes to new audiences, views, and again, watch time, you can look at unique viewers on YouTube only for a rolling 90-day period. And that's really to maintain, it's, our data scientists have decided it's to maintain the integrity of those unique metrics. But it will give you a sense of how many actual people are watching your channel over time. If you wanted to, you could keep track. You maybe look at it every month, keep track of what the number was every month. It's possible, though, that they won't be entirely deduplicated, but at least you'll see whether or not it's growing. And so that's what's really important. And then we're going to talk about traffic sources. So home screen is one of them, suggested videos and browse are others. And we're going to touch a little bit more on those shortly. Let's continue. And then I talked about the community tab. And so there's so many different things that you can use the community tab for. You can reshare older clips. You can notify audiences that you've got a live stream coming up. You can engage the community in discussion. You could post a poll. There's so many different ways that you can use community. And every time someone interacts with your channel and your content on the community tab, it sends a positive signal to the platform that, oh, great, okay, things on this channel are getting high engagement. Maybe we want to recommend them to more people who have similar interests. I will continue. I did want to mention membership. I'm sure there's, lots of different business models potentially on this call, advertising, subscription, but YouTube also offers you a way to set up membership and make certain content available only to members. And you can charge you can charge folks for that. Just wanted to sort of plant a seed here. It may be an interesting opportunity. Certainly, if you already have a subscription product and you want to keep some of your content behind the wall, is there a way to extend that to YouTube? Perhaps, maybe, but just something to consider and think about. Oh, okay. So now we're going to talk about discovery. This is always a hot topic. People wondering, how do I get on someone's home screen on YouTube? How do people find my stuff? So, very practical. We'll start here. Creating very effective titles and thumbnails. Look, you're a news group. You certainly don't need me to tell you how to write great headlines. That is where you have a bit of a competitive advantage. And what I mean by that is compared to individual creators or folks who work within a different genre. So I think, one of the things to be mindful of, though, is where people are watching your video. And in analytics, you're actually able to see if someone is watching on a mobile device, a tablet, or a connected TV screen. If you have a big mobile audience, which you're going to have to be mindful of when you're doing these thumbnails, is that people are going to see that thumbnail on a very tiny screen. So if you've got a visual that's hard, that's got a lot in it, maybe it's from far away, it's hard to distinguish on a tiny little thumbnail, that may not perform as well as a thumbnail where you've got a zoom in or a close up or a face. Something to consider. And also, always super fun with headline writing. It'll often be truncated. So you have a very small character set to work with. Always a challenge everybody has to deal with. Listed out here, be accurate, be concise, be searchable. Talk about one of the ways to figure out which search terms people are using to find your content, and be engaging. Obviously, I feel like this is probably what you're already doing on your own properties, but the same applies here to YouTube. Practical. So when you're building your thumbnails, you want to bear in mind certain things that you don't control. One is that play button right in the middle of that thumbnail. You certainly don't want to be putting anything critical behind that. And you want to be mindful of where the time code sits, which is in the bottom right-hand corner. And so what we say here is based on those things. Your branding should ideally be situated in the corners, except for that bottom time code overlay. And you want to make sure that it's as consistent as possible. Essentially, with your thumbnail strategy, you really want someone to be able to identify it just by look and feel. Oh, I see. This is for sure. I'm going to just use a Vox video. This is The Verge. I can totally tell. I don't even need to really see what's in that video screen or read the title. I know I'm going to like this. So the more consistent you can be, the better. And this is where we get into templatized thumbnails. This is what I'm talking about. So you can see that organizations, The Guardian, The Atlantic, what they'll do is they'll set up their thumbnails all to look incredibly similar. So it's always the same branding. It's always in the same place. And look, I understand that it may not be possible in small organizations, but even the image has the same style. Sometimes perhaps it's in color, it's black and white, whatever it is, it's always the same. And I think it also makes it easier for your teams when you're working with a templatized thumbnail approach. It's literally just, don't move this title here. This is where your image is, with some guidelines. It always makes it much easier for everybody. This is what I was referring to a little bit earlier. So If a lot of your traffic is on a mobile phone, this is what they're going to see. There's a lot going on here. And so it's a visual medium, obviously. You really do want that thumbnail to give folks the most important and best visual that you're going to show them in the video. Don't bury it. Don't be cute. Put it right up in front. So if it's an explosion, if it's, you see there's a volcano, great. I can sort of make out the volcano and the smoke. Like, give me the really exciting, solid image. If it's a big news story around a person, you can see, you can pretty easily identify on the right who's speaking in those videos. And so it's really important to be mindful of the device and the amount going on all around your own video when it's suggested. So when it comes to discoverability, one of the tactics a lot of organizations use, and you may already be using it, do it for YouTube too, is to use Google Trends. So have a look at what words are people using to search for news stories. So the example we always use is really around COVID. So at the beginning of COVID, everybody was writing about the coronavirus. And in that graphic there, if you can see it, that red line, which represents sort of the beginning of the pandemic, shows you how many searches use the word coronavirus. But look what happened over time. Coronavirus declined, and we started to see COVID-19. We started to see COVID. It's really important to keep your eye on how those words, how the language is evolving. And you can actually, in Google Trends, you can see even by geography, because of course, markets are different, what people are using to search for content. So I highly recommend considering using Google Trends to help inform the keywords, the descriptions that you use. And I think another important note, which truthfully I didn't know until I joined YouTube, is that YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. And so if you're spending any time on SEO for Google on your O&O properties, you really do need to approach YouTube in exactly the same way. So we talked about consistency being really important and building up a programming schedule. This is just an example of what that might look like. Just adding, and maybe you guys already do this, so it would just be a matter of adding YouTube as another one of your channels. But I think it's really important for everybody to lay out what they think they can do, make sure everybody's bought in, and stick to the schedule. And as you grow, as you get more audience, you may adjust it. But again, really important for you guys to lay that out so that teams consistently publish. So earlier I mentioned a lot of folks are probably not going to find your content on your channel page by going to your channel page. That said, there are things you can do on your channel page to make it more compelling. So you have a channel banner. You can actually change that channel banner. It doesn't need to be static. Now, again, that depends on your resources, but you can change it up depending on the news of the day. Maybe you've got, again, some special coverage, whatever it might be, you can actually use the channel banner to promote it. You also have the ability to curate all of the shelves that appear on your channel page, the order of those shelves. Playlists are very powerful on YouTube because once someone views one video in a playlist, it'll automatically play the next one. And I can't tell you, I do this. I'll have YouTube on and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's the next video. And then I'm in. I mean, I think that's one of the genius things about the platform is sort of that rabbit hole. Next thing you know, it's 40 minutes later and you've watched an entire playlist because you're interested in the content. Playlists are also how we identify podcasts. So if you do have a podcast, full episodes can be curated in a playlist. It can be designated a podcast, and then it automatically gets pulled into our podcast destination on YouTube. So we have a podcast hub. It also gets pulled into YouTube Music. On YouTube Music, even if you don't have a premium account, you can listen to podcasts offline. When the app's closed, you can download them. So it's a similar experience to other podcast products out there. This is what I was just talking about. This is more around creating playlists. When you put a playlist together, you really do want it to be thematic. You want each of the videos to have something in common, because if it automatically plays for a user and it's completely unrelated, they won't watch it. They will turn it off. And so you want to make sure that the videos that play one after another would make sense to a user who's interested in the topic. So you can see there's all sorts of ways that you can organize topics on your channel. Okay, just gonna have a sip of water. Let's talk a little bit about analytics. So there's a lot. When you go into YouTube Studio and you click on analytics, there's just a ton available to you. I'm just going to touch on a few things. We already talked about impressions. That's the number of folks who actually see your thumbnails and titles. Click-through rates. I'm assuming most folks in the call know what that means. Views, traffic sources. So we're going to dig into this in a moment, but you can see how people are finding your content. And then we've got watch time. Those are really the big metrics, certainly to focus on. And so one thing I think people often miss when they're in studio looking at their YouTube channel is advanced mode. So up in the right-hand corner, you can actually click on that and go even deeper into all of your analytics beyond what you see in studio. You can also set custom date ranges. Really, you can set a custom date range. You can look at a year, a month, whatever it is that you want, which can be obviously incredibly helpful. When you go into advanced mode, there's a bunch of stuff that you're going to see. So up, it'll become a full screen experience, and you'll have an opportunity to click on. And again, as I said, if we have a minute, I'll show you. I'll see if I can show you something in analytics, although it just occurred to me you're all on different channels, so I may not be able to. If you have any questions later, you can certainly send them. But when you go into the tool, you're going to see little plus signs. If you click the plus sign, this pop-up box will come up and give you all sorts of options when it comes to metrics that you can look at. And basically it'll pull it into that dashboard you see. It'll chart a graph for you. You can compare. So also in the tool, in the very top right-hand corner, you have a compare to tool. You can compare to different time periods. You can compare to different channels that you own. There's all sorts of things that you can do in advanced mode. Also, I think we have really good audience insights now in studio. So it's always interesting to look at the other channels that your audience is watching. This is a rolling 28-day view. So keep an eye on that. I think sometimes it can give you a little insight into who's enjoying your content. You can see other videos that your audience watch. You can also see the top searches related to your channel. And so there's a tab now. I don't think it's on the next one. Let me just see here. No, there's a tab in analytics called research. And it's going to show you those examples that I just talked about. What other videos is your audience looking at? What are the topics they're searching for? To help your editorial teams figure out if you're missing a big story or topic of interest. You can also see when your viewers are on YouTube. But, because Canada is such a vast country, you're probably going to see a lot of dark purple, like run the gamut. You might, though, notice some trends. Maybe you have an evening audience. If I'm looking at this one, I'm like, oh, this is probably the lunchtime crowd at the office. And so if I'm refreshing my content, I best do it in the morning so that when they come at noon, It'll be new. So really, really, really good to keep an eye on that. There's the compare to that I was talking about. So it allows you to compare different metrics, different time periods. This is just demonstrating what that looks like. Sometimes what's really interesting to look at, and I've learned more about this as I've been at YouTube, when I talk to more of the more experienced folks, one of the things they will look at is the first 24 hours of video performance. Because sometimes it's within that period of time you can tell if a video is really going to hit it or not. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound incredibly confusing right after that. The opposite is also true. Sometimes you'll post a video, it does okay, but then maybe some massive news story hits that's relevant to the video and it pops a year later. We just had a partner who posted a video of some kind. I can't remember what the story was. And then all of a sudden one day it just absolutely went bananas on YouTube. And it was because Kim Kardashian had referenced it. Like, you just never know. So all of that to say, though, these are the different ways that you can compare how video is performing. And then here, yeah, this is comparing two different channels. You can even group video together and compare groups of video. So let's pretend you're sort of wondering, well, we're doing a lot of hyper local coverage, you know, municipal politics coverage, but we're also doing more provincial coverage. Group a bunch of those videos together, see which, you know, which content is actually getting you the most engagement. You can do that. And so so there's that little, you can't, it's hard to see there, but not only can you customize in terms of time period, the little plus sign I referenced earlier allowed you to build dashboards accordingly. So you pick the metrics you think are most important. You can build them, you can download them. There's a downward facing arrow in the top right. You can download them and they'll download as a Google Sheet. Usually you can convert that into an Excel if you're on Microsoft Office, which I find really handy. I like to do that because then what I can do is I can automatically calculate percentage changes and whatnot. So when you get the PDF here, guys, you should be able to click on all of the videos contained within it. So here's a how-to around analytics, but essentially, and this is really honestly most of my job. So what I'll do when I'm learning about a partner and trying to figure out how their business is performing, I will literally go and roll around in their data. I'll pull a bunch of metrics. I'll look at patterns, growth, decline. I'll look at age group. I'll look at geography. I'll look at a whole bunch of things to try to cobble together a story around what the opportunities are, what the challenges are, where the audience lives, what's doing well, what's not doing so well, and then come up with an analysis, which would then drive a strategy. So this is I mentioned this earlier. So we're going to talk about traffic sources. I'm sorry it's so hard to read there, but essentially you're able to see where folks are coming from. Home just means they saw you and visited you from their home screen. So it was a video that popped up as soon as they went into their app and maybe scrolled down the page or the website. Maybe it was suggested to them. Maybe you get a lot of engagement from your videos being suggested. Maybe there's some of your videos that are suggested more than others, which are primarily coming through search. Really interesting to take a look and see where things are coming from. It's, to be honest with you, more mature channels with a lot of engagement will have really, if we look at the buckets, it'll be fairly evenly split. So you'll have about 33% from home, 33% from search, 33% from suggested. If you're over indexing on one of those or under indexing, so let's pretend you're only getting 5% of your traffic through search, time to take a look at your keywords, descriptions, and how you're optimizing for discovery. You'll also be able to see if you're getting traffic external from YouTube. So that would include things like Google search. So you're able to tell how much referral traffic you're getting. So this is, attracting new viewers. I alluded to the first 24 hours of video performance. Sometimes if you do an analysis, so you bucket together those videos and you track their first 24-hour performance, you can start to see and get a sense of, this is tracking really quickly. This seems to be what the audience is most interested in, and then adjust and tweak your strategy accordingly. Oh, one other note. Pair that with how many subscribers you're getting from the video. So you can see individually every single video, how many subscribers you earn. You can sort based on which video got you the most subscribers. That tells you what your highly leaned in audience might be into. And then, click-through rate. I mean, I think this is really helpful. And this is all about how are your thumbnails and titles performing? What can you learn from your top performing click-through CTRs? What can you learn from your lowest performing? One of the most wonderful things that's rolling out that people have been asking for ages, very soon, is an A/B thumbnail testing tool. So this is going to be wonderful for everybody. Yeah, right? I mean, come on. You'll be able to publish 2 different thumbnails and the system will automatically pick the winner. And I think we're going to learn so much from that. More to come, but it's imminent, very, very soon. How's your latest video doing? So you can drill right down into a video. You can see where folks are coming from, where they're watching it, what country, what their demographics are, how long you kept them. So if you look at that graph at the bottom there, you'll actually see when the audience dropped off during the video. How long did you retain them through the video? Sometimes there's a very obvious drop off. You can see the moment it happened, go back to the video, and you might find, oh God, the minute we pivoted from X to Y, we lost people. This is incredibly granular analysis, guys. No, it's not like a heat map. It literally looks like it. You can't actually, when I think of a heat map, so tell me if you had something different in mind. I think of where people's eyes, we used to do this. I remember back in the day, we could see, ooh, this is where people were looking. This is more tracking how many folks, what percentage. So basically what we do is we measure the percentage of the video that a user watches. And so you can imagine we combine all of those in an average here, and it's reflected in this sort of downward graph. So what you are able to see, it's not a heat map, but you are able to see sort of the moment where the audience dipped or not. Sometimes what's really exciting is you look at it and you're like, wow, people were really in for most of the time, which is wonderful and gives you a sense of, okay, well, this is the kind of stuff that we need to be doing. I hope that answered. Okay. All righty. Okay. I know, would be nice, wouldn't it? There's so many things. There's so many things. As I used to run product over at Bell Media too, and so many wonderful requests from users to build stuff. And I think just like every other organization, we have a competing priorities, and only so much we can build. It's taken a real long time to get that A/B thumbnail testing. It's kind of a miracle. Anyway, it feels like it's fun to be somewhere though where there is continuous improvement in the product. That's pretty cool. I know, yeah. Okay. It's imminent, Darcy. I can't give you a date, but we're not even talking weeks. Pretty darn soon. Okay, digging into shorts. So much conversation about short form versus long form, vertical video versus 16:9. Here's what I want to set out right off the top. This is just an example of an outlet in Mexico who really leaned into shorts and drove a crazy amount of subscribers. via shorts. Here's the thing, and we know this to be true. When I look at partners now, sometimes upwards of 30-40% of their subscribers are coming in through shorts. And often the subscribers coming in are younger. So we know that Gen Z, and I'll show you a stat in a minute, uses shorts to sample content and then subscribe to it and watch other content. What I will say, though, is that certainly as you're thinking about the business, right now, shorts doesn't monetize as well as your regular video on demand, as your regular clips. And this is for a variety of reasons. I think that it's a very new ad format. Advertisers are trying to figure out what's effective. What we are seeing, though, and it's our goal, is to make sure that the revenue per thousand, or RPM, for shorts is the same as it is for our other video. And we're seeing a steady climb. So that, yeah, exactly. Yes. What a great way to look at it. Absolutely. That's your appetizer. You like it? Okay, well, I'll have a main course. You could actually use the food analogy for a lot of what we do, but that's a great way to look at it. You can actually, when you create a short, if you use the mobile app to create a short, you can insert a link back to the original video, the full-length original video. Okay, so it is a great entry point, as I said. It does attract a young audience, and so here's a stat. We did some Gen Z research around news. 60% of the folks we surveyed said they use short form to discover things. So it's really important. So what I would say, the way to look at this is you really want to have a multi-format strategy. And here's what I mean by that. You definitely want to be in shorts. If you're not in shorts, you're not showing up in the shorts feed, and you're missing out on a really amazing acquisition opportunity and pulling in that younger audience. But you don't want to do it at the expense of your bread and butter video, which is still going to earn you the bulk of your revenue. So you have to figure out a happy medium. You don't want to be all or nothing on both. You want to figure out what's the right mix for us to grow the business, but also to grow the audience. And so long form and short form, they're complementary, as I was just saying. Here's what's really interesting. So I think it's important to mention, and again, guys, I realize that a lot of what I'm saying is incredibly contradictory. So what I'm about to say is going to contradict everything I said about thinking about the super tiny screen. Connected TV is actually the fastest growing platform for YouTube. And actually, over 60% of YouTube CTV watch time is on content that's over 21 minutes. So the idea that YouTube is just super short form, shorts only, is just flat out untrue. What we're actually seeing now are organizations, broadcasters, media companies putting together video compilations that are hours long. People watch them. It's the craziest thing, but they absolutely watch them. We're also finding they'll even listen or watch to podcasts, and they won't do it while multitasking. They view it as a form of entertainment, and will put on a video podcast with talking heads and literally lean back and watch. And so again, they are complementary. You really want to have a mix of both. This is what I just said. We talked about cadence. This is, again, just repeating what I said. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Camille. Yes. They sure can. So you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasting. You can run it with a static slate. You can run it with a slate that's got some motion in it. Either's fine. It's completely and totally up to you. Again, as you're building your YouTube business, if I'm you, I'm not doing anything custom for YouTube until you build up your audience and you see that you're getting some engagement. So if you're doing a podcast and you're already distributing it elsewhere, we've got an RSS. You can send us an RSS feed, which will automatically upload it sort of path of least resistance, easy, just do that. I've had some partners say to me, oh, but like we want to spend time, putting a video together and buffering. I'm like, don't until you know that the podcast is going to perform. Now, that said, we do know that if video is included, the engagement is double. It's a video platform. That makes sense. But now that we're also on YouTube Music, you've got a lot of people there looking for an audio first experience. Also want to mention that we have audio DAI. So we serve ads, of course, in between videos, but now we actually serve audio ads. So when we know that a user is in YouTube Music, for example, and the app is closed or the screen is off, we assume it's an audio experience and we'll deliver an audio advertisement. So podcasts are now monetized, not just through video, but also audio ads, which is great. Yeah, they should be on YouTube too, but I understand why they aren't. A lot of people don't realize how big a platform YouTube is for podcasting. What I'll do too, guys, because this is obviously an area of interest, is I'll send along our Podcasting 101 deck too, and you can take a look at it. Okay, so shorts, back to shorts, you bet. Here's the thing. Thumbnails are meaningless because they don't really exist on shorts, right? What ends up happening is the video plays when a user swipes through it, and thinking about that, you've only got 3 seconds to get them. So this is where we say, do not hold the sexiest, most exciting video back. Put it up front. Show it right away. You also, and maybe you're already doing this on other social media platforms, you might want to include a text overlay, assuming that there's no audio. And by the way, guys, if you're already producing short form video for other platforms that's under the 60-second mark, just post it on YouTube too. Don't customize it for us. If you've already produced something under a minute and put it up somewhere else, just put it up on YouTube too. Maximize that one piece of content. As we continue here, some news-specific tips around shorts. You might want to include dates. The reason why is if someone is scrolling through shorts and the video automatically plays, remember, this could be a video you just posted. It could be a video from a year ago. You probably don't want to give people the impression that something major has just happened when actually the short you produced was from a year ago. So one note is to maybe include a date as an overlay, text over video I just mentioned. And then, a lot of things that perform really well on shorts are sort of the super graphic treatment graphs, some sort of fun overlays, and even a bit of a different voice. Maybe it's a little lighter. Maybe it's a little more animated, literally. Maybe there's some animation. Think about that younger audience and what they enjoy. There's an opportunity to do that on shorts too. And then some other specific news examples for shorts. So highlights are always good. The news roundup I talked about. I think this one's particularly hilarious. Poor Liz Truss, 45 days and 45 seconds. Mini explainers. And listen, the other thing I want you to think about, a lot of folks, and of course my old TV team would kill me for saying this, you do not need to get fancy. You do not need to be producing 4K video, guys. We're talking on your phone, on your desk. And what's been really surprising for me is to see, and I don't know why it's surprising, but to see how incredibly well just reporters talking into their phone camera perform. It could be, you see here, this sort of a reporter in the newsroom probably talking about how a story came together. Pretend you're out there reporting something's happening. Recording yourself while you're there, showing people what you're seeing, describing what's happening, also very, very compelling. Op-ed lends itself incredibly well to this format. So those are all things to consider. And again, this doesn't require a massive studio and a massive TV budget. Here's some other examples. I'm not sure how many folks would have a massive archive to dip into. Maybe your definition of an archive is 5 years ago. It doesn't matter, but they can do really well. And then again, you've got the reporter behind the story. I think real news junkies do like a little bit of that behind the curtain stuff. Shorts is great for that. And that is it. We only have 6 minutes left. I'm going to send you podcasts. I'm going to send you this. I can't show you analytics the more I think about it because I don't have a generic channel to show you. That said, if anyone has any questions, let me know. The deck, I know it was hard to see because it's so small, but there's some really good screenshots in there. Any questions before we go? Any burning questions from people? No? I know your time is precious. I know an hour is a long time in your world. So thank you so much for joining today, especially on a Friday. Jeez.
Thank you, Stephanie. Your presentations are always really informative, really helpful. And thanks for the great questions as well, everybody.
Yeah, the magic monetization number. Now, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I think it'd be different for everybody, but I will give you a little tip. In order to qualify for mid-roll, a video has to be at least 8 minutes. So if it's under 8 minutes, it'll just be a pre-roll and a post-roll. So that's something to think about. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for all your
Thanks, Steph. Nice to see you.
Amazing. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, folks.